All came on a Tuesday, which I remember because I had just gotten home from a double shift and my feet were still aching when I picked up the phone. It was my aunt, my mother's older sister, and she hadn't called me in almost 2 years, not since the funeral, not since everything fell apart. She didn't say hello. She just said, "Your grandfather is in Meadowbrook. He's been there for 3 months. I thought you should know." Then she hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after that, still holding my phone, still in my scrubs, staring at nothing. Meadowbrook was a county care facility about 40 minutes from where I lived. I knew the name because one of my coworkers had mentioned it once, not with warmth. She'd called it the kind of place where people went when nobody wanted to deal with the paperwork anymore. My grandfather's name was Harold. He was 79 years old, a retired electrician from outside of Columbus, and the last time I'd seen him he was standing at my grandmother's graveside trying very hard not to cry and failing anyway. That was 3 years ago. After the funeral, my mother's brother, my uncle, had swooped in, handled everything, and the family had sort of quietly reorganized itself around his version of things. My grandfather had moved in with them. We were told he was doing fine. Apparently fine meant something different than I thought. I drove out to Meadowbrook the next morning before work. The building was clean enough on the outside. Brick, a few sad rose bushes along the front walk. Inside it smelled the way those places always smell, industrial cleaner and cafeteria food, and something underneath both of those things that you don't want to name. A woman at the front desk pointed me down a long hallway without asking who I was or why I was there, which told me something. I found his room at the end of the east wing. The door was open. He was sitting in a recliner next to the window, dressed in a cardigan that was slightly too big for him now, looking out at a parking lot. There was nothing on his walls, no photos, no cards on the windowsill. One plastic plant in the corner that hadn't been dusted in a while. He looked smaller than I remembered. Grandpa. He turned slowly, and for a second his eyes just moved across my face without landing anywhere. Then something shifted. "Ruthie," he said, and then he blinked. "No, no, you're not Ruthie." He looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I forget." Ruthie was my grandmother. I pulled a chair over and sat down beside him. "It's okay. It's me, Caroline." He said my name the way you say something you're trying to hold on to. "My daughter's girl." "That's right." He nodded slowly. We sat together for a while. Outside, a maintenance truck pulled into the parking lot and someone unloaded bags of salt for the walkways. The radiator clicked. Neither of us spoke, and the silence wasn't uncomfortable so much as it was heavy, the kind that settles in when there's too much to say and no good place to start. "Do you get many visitors?" I asked carefully. He looked at the parking lot. "Your uncle comes," he said. "Now and then." I waited. "He's busy," he added. "Same way you'd add an excuse that you've already stopped believing." I went back the following week, and the week after that I started bringing things. A real plant for the windowsill, a photo of him and my grandmother from before I was born that I found in a box in my closet, a bag of the peanut butter crackers he'd always kept in his truck when I was little. The nurses started recognizing me. One of them, a tired woman with kind eyes, told me I was the only family member who'd been by in over 6 weeks. I didn't say anything to that. I just nodded and went in. Some visits, he was sharp. He'd tell me stories about jobs he'd done back in the 70s, about meeting my grandmother at a dance hall in 1969, about the winter the pipes froze and he'd had to fix the whole system himself in 3 feet of snow. Other visits he drifted, called me by the wrong name, lost track of what we were talking about mid-sentence, and looked vaguely startled to find me sitting there. I kept coming anyway. About 5 weeks in, I arrived on a Thursday afternoon, and he was more alert than I'd seen him in a while. He was sitting up straight. His eyes were focused. He watched me come through the door, and then he watched me sit down, and then he said, without any preamble at all, "They want the house?" I went still. "What?" "Your uncle." He kept his voice low, even though we were alone. "And his wife. They've been after me to sign things. Papers." He shook his head slightly. "I keep telling them I need to read them first. They keep telling me it's nothing to worry about." Something cold moved through me. "What kind of papers?" "I don't know exactly. Something about the property. The house your grandmother and I built." He looked at his hands for a moment. "I told them I wanted to talk to a lawyer first. Your uncle got angry. said I was making things complicated. Said I was confused and that the lawyers would just take my money. The house was a three-bedroom in a good neighborhood that my grandparents had owned outright since the 90s. No mortgage. In the Columbus market, it was worth something significant. I didn't know the exact number, but I knew enough. Grandpa, I said, don't sign anything, okay? Not until I look at it. He nodded. Then his expression shifted, went softer and less certain. "Did you come yesterday?" he asked. "I thought someone came yesterday. That was me on Tuesday." He nodded again slowly. "Right, right, I forget. I didn't sleep well that night." The next week I came in earlier than usual. I was turning the corner toward his hallway when I heard my uncle's voice. Not angry exactly, but the controlled version of angry, the voice people use when they want to sound reasonable but aren't feeling it. I stopped just outside the doorway. "It's a simple transfer, Dad. You've already got one foot out the door with the memory stuff. The doctor said so. This just makes things cleaner for when." "When what?" My grandfather's voice was steadier than I expected. "When we need to handle things, when you can't." A pause and then a woman's voice, my uncle's wife. "We're trying to protect you." Is that so hard to understand? We're the ones who've been dealing with everything. I want to read it first. You've read it 3 times. Her voice had an edge to it now. You keep forgetting you read it. That's the whole problem. I pushed the door open. My uncle turned. He was holding a manila folder. His wife was standing near the window, arms crossed, and for 1 second they both just stared at me. "Caroline." My uncle recovered first. "What are you doing here?" "Visiting." I looked at the folder. "What's that?" "Family business." He closed it. "Nothing to do with you. It looks like a property transfer document." I hadn't actually seen it, but I watched his face when I said it, and his expression confirmed enough. His wife made a small sound, dismissive, almost amused. "You've been playing nurse for what, 2 months? And now you're the expert?" "I'm not claiming to be anything," I said. "I'm just saying he told me he wanted a lawyer to look at whatever you're asking him to sign, and until that happens, he shouldn't sign anything." My uncle's jaw tightened. "Stay out of this. Let me see the paperwork." "No." My grandfather looked between us, confused but watchful. Even through the fog, he could read the room. He reached over and put his hand on the folder in my uncle's grip. "I'm not signing today," he said. The silence that followed was the loudest kind. My uncle looked at his father for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "You have no idea what you're getting into," he said. "Maybe not," I said, "but I'm getting into it anyway." They left without another word. My uncle didn't look at me again on the way out. My grandfather sat quietly for a moment after the door clicked shut. Then he said, "I knew you'd come." I wasn't sure if he remembered that I came every week or if he meant something else. I didn't ask. That night I sat down with my laptop and started looking things up. Property records, power of attorney laws in Ohio, what constitutes undue influence, what cognitive impairment means legally when it comes to contracts. I am not a lawyer. I work in hospital administration, but I know how to read documents and I know how to find the right questions. And by midnight, I had found enough to know that what my uncle was attempting was, at minimum, ethically bankrupt and possibly significantly more than that. The next morning, I made a phone call. A friend of mine from college had gone on to work at an elder law firm, and though we hadn't talked in over a year, she picked up on the second ring. I explained the situation in about 4 minutes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Get a geriatric assessment done. And don't let him sign anything without written notice that it's being reviewed." She gave me the name of an attorney she trusted. I made another call. 3 days later, I walked into Meadowbrook with someone beside me. He was a small, quiet man in his late 50s, with reading glasses on a chain and a briefcase that looked older than I was. He didn't seem like much until he started talking, at which point I understood exactly why my friend had recommended him. My uncle was already there when we arrived. He'd apparently gotten wind somehow, maybe from the front desk, maybe from someone on staff, and he was standing in my grandfather's room looking like a man who was braced for something but trying not to show it. He looked at the attorney, then at me. "What is this?" "This is someone who specializes in elder law," I said. "He's here to review any documents being presented to my grandfather." "You can't just bring someone in here?" "She can, actually." The attorney's voice was even. As a concerned family member with no conflicting financial interests in the estate, Miss Caroline has standing to request a legal review before any transfer documents are executed, particularly given questions about your father's current cognitive capacity. My uncle's wife, who was standing near the window again, made a sound I couldn't quite categorize. This is insane. He's our family. We're trying to take care of things. The attorney opened his briefcase. Then you won't have any objection to a formal capacity evaluation before anything is signed. Silence. My grandfather was watching all of this with an expression I hadn't seen on him in months. Alert. Present. He looked at my uncle, then at the folder still sitting on the bedside table, then at me. "I'd like a lawyer," he said clearly. "My own lawyer." My uncle took a step forward. "Dad, come on. You know me. You trust me." My grandfather was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I know you want the house. It wasn't an accusation. It was just a fact, delivered flatly, the way you state something you've known for a long time and have finally decided to stop dancing around." My uncle's face went through several things at once. "That's not," he started. "You've been asking since before your mother died," my grandfather said. "She told me. She said, 'Hal, your son already has his eye on the equity.' I didn't want to believe her." He looked at his hands. I should have believed her. The room was very quiet. The attorney spoke. "In the absence of consent to proceed, I'll be filing a formal notice with the court requesting a competency evaluation and a temporary hold on any property transfers. That means nothing moves until the court is satisfied your father is acting freely and with full understanding." My uncle's face had gone a color I didn't have a name for. "You're going to regret this, Caroline." I looked at him. "He's my grandfather. I'm not going to apologize for that." They left, not dramatically, no door slamming, no final speech, just the quiet, deliberate exit of people who know they've lost the room and are saving the rest of their anger for later. My grandfather let out a long breath. "You okay?" I asked. "Tired," he said. "I've been tired for a long time." He reached over and patted the back of my hand. "But better." In the weeks that followed, things moved. The attorney filed the notice. A geriatric specialist came in to do a full cognitive evaluation. My grandfather tested with moderate short-term memory impairment, but sound long-term judgment and clear capacity to make informed decisions with proper time and support. The court noted that the property transfer documents my uncle had been presenting were reviewed by an independent examiner, who flagged several terms that were atypical for a family gift arrangement and consistent with an attempt to extract equity under conditions of diminished oversight. Those were the examiner's words, not mine, but I wrote them down. My uncle hired his own attorney, who sent letters. We sent letters back. At a certain point, my uncle stopped coming to Meadowbrook altogether. His wife sent one voicemail to my phone calling me a word I won't repeat here, and then that stopped too. What happened next took a few months, but it happened. My grandfather, working with the elder law attorney, set up a proper trust. His house stayed in his name. A licensed care manager was brought in to oversee his needs going forward. And we started the process of finding him somewhere better than Meadowbrook. Somewhere with activities he'd actually like, with staff ratios that made sense, with a window that looked at something other than a parking lot. He moved to a new facility in March. It was smaller, quieter, and on the day I helped him get settled, he had a view of a courtyard with a big oak tree just starting to bud. He looked at it for a long time. "Your grandmother would have liked that tree," he said. "She would have," I agreed. He turned to look at me. He was having a good day, sharp, present himself. "You know," he said, "I have something for you. I've been holding on to it." He reached into the drawer of his nightstand and pulled out a small envelope. It had my name on it in his handwriting. Careful, slightly unsteady, but his. Inside was a letter, 2 pages, handwritten, dated 4 months earlier. He'd written it during a clear stretch, he explained, because he was afraid of what would happen if he waited too long. In it, he documented everything, the pressure from my uncle, the papers he'd been asked to sign, the things his wife had said. He'd asked the facility social worker to notarize it and keep a copy. He'd written it as a record, in case he ever got confused about what was real. And at the end of it, in handwriting that got slightly shakier but never stopped, he had written, Caroline has been the only one who came without wanting anything. Keep that, because it's rare. I want her to have my tools, her grandmother's jewelry, and the rocking chair from the porch. She knows which one. I had to look at the oak tree for a while before I could say anything. "Grandpa," I finally managed. "Don't argue with me," he said mildly. "I wrote it down on a good day. That makes it official." He smiled then, the smile I remembered from when I was 7 years old and he'd let me sit on his shoulders at the county fair. The same man. Still there. Still there. The tools are in my garage now. The jewelry is in a small wooden box on my dresser. The rocking chair is on my porch, and on good evenings I sit in it and think about what it means to stay when staying is inconvenient, what it means to show up for someone when showing up costs you something: time, sleep, peace, family peace, especially. I didn't go to Meadowbrook that first day to be a hero. I went because my aunt called and said his name and something in me moved before I could think about it. I'm not sure I would have described it then as love, exactly. More like recognition. Like seeing something you were responsible for without knowing you'd been assigned it. But maybe that's what love is, sometimes. Not the kind you choose out of abundance, but the kind that shows up on a Tuesday when your feet hurt and you really should go to sleep. And instead, you get in the car. My grandfather is doing better. His memory still has gaps, and always will. But he has people around him now who read to him on Wednesdays, who know he likes his coffee with exactly 1 sugar, who call me if anything changes. My uncle and I haven't spoken. I don't think we will. Not for a long time, maybe not ever. That used to bother me more than it does now. Some things break and don't go back together, and the best you can do is stop expecting them to. What I have instead is a rocking chair, and a letter, and an oak tree through a window somewhere across town, and a man who wrote my name in careful handwriting on a good day, and meant every word of it. That's more than enough.